Actually, the book I should have brought up first that I didn't know about is the Apocalypse of Saint Peter, and then there's another one, Apocalypse of Saint Paul. Tell us a little bit about it, because I was kind of shocked. I actually sent an email to our head of content, Jason, and I said, go find the full text of this thing. I want to see this. I want to see the Apocalypse of St. Peter, because there's quite a history there. And this was a respected text for a long time. I mean, in your book here, it says that this was commonly read. St. Cyril of Alexander totally considered it a legitimate text, inspired text, and it was even read at Mass in Palestine all the way through the 5th century. And eventually it was kicked out of the canon.
So not recognized. But
yeah. But that's heavy duty. Like, this is not just some crazy thing. This was heavily respected for a long time. The Apocalypse of St. Peter. Whoa.
And one reason for that is because, you did have books during that period that were not written by the person whose name is on it, but it was kind of a customary thing that if you wanted a big audience, put the name, attribute it to that person. And, biblical scholars try to make a lot of that for biblical texts, which I don't accept. But for books like this, it's pretty certain that Peter didn't write the book. But the point I'm making is that the fact that there would have been lots of people who believe that it was written by Peter could largely account for its popularity. And then the other thing is because it is so dramatic. And
well, tell us about that.
Well, there's when I wrote the novel that I wrote, now called My Visit to Hell. It's not my favorite title, but I had to study deeply not just Dante's Inferno, but what came before that. A lot of folks think they know about Dante's Inferno, that he wrote this epic poem, and then the narrative's got 3 parts. And the first part is Inferno, Hell, where he writes about that, and very vivid descriptions of hell having different circles and different depths and that kind of thing. So I thought, okay, most people think that he kind of came up with all that out of his head, which would be a wonderful thing. But it turns out that there is a whole genre of literature known as tours of hell that goes all the way back to the Apocalypse of Peter and Paul. Those two, and so lots of similarities. I think he would have been aware of those and could draw on a lot of them. And so that's not to take away from what he did. It's the most amazing work, the entire
on his
work, the Divine Comedy. And
that's a whole nother literary.
Yeah, and using Italian instead of Latin for that kind of literature, helping to shape a whole new tradition of Italian literature.
But I'll tell you, I learned he was not the first one. Of course, he wasn't the first one to write about hell, but he wasn't the first one to tie the punishment to the sin. And that was a little surprising to me. I thought that was like his creative genius. Now, he was genius, but the Apocalypse of Peter and Paul do that. They punish people based on the sin.
And they have it's a notion of poetic justice, that in justice there would be a sin that, the punishment would be according to the sin. Sometimes it's even an ironic kind of punishment. But also that there are kind of degrees in different regions, if you will, of hell. That's all part of it too.
Yeah.
It's not just a vision of all these people suffering in fire or something. And of course, there's didactic value to that, teaching value. That whoever did write those books would have known that. This is a way of making it vivid for us.
Yeah, he's got an
it's
example.
It's not just bad.
He's got an example of lustful women that dye their hair, and they're hanging by their hair, their dyed hair, for all eternity. But then he makes the point. It was like, that sounds really unfair. but his point is, it's not. He says it's not just for them to be attractive, but it's for them to invite adultery and fornication. Like, that's the difference. It's not just you're trying to look like an attractive human being. Who doesn't? I mean, come on, we're on camera. I don't want to look like a total
I gave a pope on that for a long time. Yeah. I've got a face made for radio.
No, it's just, everybody has some sense of self-dignity. They want to, look good to some extent as best they can, and there's nothing wrong with a woman dyeing their hair, but when you're doing those things for the purpose of luring others, that's why he put them in there. That's why he hangs them up from their hair or some he hangs from their eyebrows. I mean, it's terrible to.
Yeah.
It's
and
terrible.
folks need to know he wasn't just going on women. I mean, they're playing hell too.
He has a special place for the fornicators together, But what was an interesting, I kind of wanted to pull this out. This is like one passage that I want to look at together. And it's a reference to abortion. And this is very, very early. Remember this?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Very early. It's on page 112 and 113. Actually at the bottom. And this is from the Apocalypse of St. Peter. And you can see here that at the top of 13, he says, they have cursed the angels who form. Okay, this is the aborted children speaking. Right? These are aborted. Again, I just find it fascinating when the early church was condemning abortion. Like we forget that, And so the other men and women who stand above them, other men and women who had aborted their children will stand above them naked while their children stand over against them in a place of delight. They will sigh and cry to God because of their parents, saying, quote, these are the ones who have despised and cursed and transgressed your commandments and delivered us, the children, to death. They have cursed the angel who formed us and have hung us up and withheld from us the light that you have given to all creatures. So there, he's making it sound like the aborted children are cursed. But, and this is powerful stuff here, the milk of their mothers flowing from their breast will congeal, and from it will come flesh-eating beasts. Oh my gosh.
Be careful. This is getting
These creatures will turn on them and torment them forever with their husbands because their
husbands, that's important.
With their husbands, because they have abandoned their commandments of God and killed their children. As for the children, this is what I was really wanting to get to. As for their children, they will be given to the caregiving angel.
And in fact, it says the children stand over against them in a place of delight.
Yeah.
So
stay on your microphone.
So, early on, here, the church is talking about, or this author, not the church, but, talking about abortion and the heinousness of it. But they're showing some kind of hope for these unbaptized children.
Yeah, they are.
I just find that's a very powerful thing. And, if you abort your kids, you're going to have a pretty bad punishment.
And again, keep in mind, these are people who haven't repented. It just isn't to say that, even from this author's perspective, that if you did it, too bad. That's you're damned to hell for sure, without hope of repentance in this life. But I think it's important to see that. I remember when I was doing my own little modern footnote on Dante, that was my novel, how I thought, okay, I really need to have abortion in there, but Dante does not. So why not? And the answer is simple: is that he was going after the things that were most common and egregious in his day, and under Christian influence, I'm sure there were abortions happening, but it wasn't this big
cultural problem.
Yeah. But in the early church, it was, because the Romans, abortion and infanticide. They just you don't want the child, just kill him. And so early on, they're having to write about that. If I'm not mistaken. Again, to get to prepare for this particular question, but if I'm not mistaken, some of the earliest documents we have, Christian documents, specify abortion. And
I think the Didache talks about.
Yeah, I'm pretty
abortion.
sure that one does for sure. About
it's essentially the earliest catechism, essentially.
Yeah, and in fact, that was probably written before the New Testament was finished being written. That's how early it is. So from the beginning, it was clear, and so it's mentioned. But by the time of
Hippocrates in the Hippocratic Oath says, "Thou shalt not form an abortion," or something to that effect.
But the Romans, Roman culture, with the infanticide, they leave the children exposed on mountaintops. It was a girl and they didn't want it, or something. All kinds of things. It was disabled. So what you're getting is that in this early apocalypse, then it does appear, and it doesn't appear in Dante because it wasn't so much a cultural problem, but it also did encourage me that okay, I've got to include that in my own book.
Hey, thanks guys for checking out the Conor Gallagher Show. Please take a moment to like, subscribe, or comment, or whatever you got to do to support it. And I appreciate that very much.